So let me tell you how HEVA started. It literally started on a whiteboard. I had just joined HEVA the Nest as a finance manager. And the idea of supporting livelihoods for artists came up. We were literally just experimenting and trying to see what could this thing look like. Is it a circle? Is it a fund? Is it a bank? So I remember being like 2 weeks into the Nest as a finance manager, and everybody kind of like gathered in my office.
And so we had a whiteboard on the first floor office, which was the accounts office and the admin office. And we were prototyping all this name, Kingdom Fund, whatever. But someone asked, what do you want to do? What is the idea behind this fund? And we said that the artists and the art and creators will have a happily ever after story.
And then we were like, oh, that's interesting.
And I think Jim Chuchu wrote Happily Ever After. And we created an acronym. And there, in that moment, we had HEVA. And we decided to not disclose that it was the Happily Ever After Fund until 10 years later. Some of us survived to disclose it 10 years later. But yeah, it was a beautiful dream that is now home to many, many other dreams.
I mean, it's a very cool job. I get to meet a lot of really cool people. In my time there, I'd say that the coolest for me has been our Cultural Heritage for Inclusive Growth grant project that we did in 2019. And again, I find that cool because the intersection between creative work and the richness of history and cultural practice and connecting the old with the new, and that includes older Kenyans or older practitioners who may feel like they have been let go from productive life and bringing them back in, connecting them with younger people and with technology that moves that stuff into the future is just magnificent.
10 years of doing a thing is a lifetime. I almost can't remember myself before this thing, but I know I exist somewhere in there. It's been one of the most transformational things I've ever done in my life, and I'm so fortunate that I got the chance to do this. And truly, I'll do it again. The first season of it was the lone voice in the desert. It was us shouting at everyone to recognize the obvious, that our children play with toys that are made by an artist, that when we're at home and we like our furniture, that's a creative. When we're at our best, we want to wear clothes that dignify us. They've been made by someone. When we are celebrating our highest moments, they've been made by someone. When we're having our lowest moments, we comfort ourselves by music and literature and the products of a creative, that our lives cannot exist without this bunch of crazy people who make this reality into products, into experiences. And while we so gladly use their services, we don't think of them in any deliberate way. That was the first season of this thing. The man in the desert shouting out.
HEVA Turning 10 has been interesting. It's been very exciting. And this is because, from my understanding of what HEVA was 10 years ago, it was an idea and an experiment. An idea by a bunch of creatives who had a frustration in the level of lack of access to skills, to finances, to business support. And so they said, let's try this thing. We understand where all of the gaps are, and let's try this experiment and kind of see what we can do with it.
HEVA 10 is exciting for me because I quite enjoyed defying expectations. And I think the entire concept of HEVA was something that a lot of people have struggled to have faith in, have expected not to last that long, not to grow. So that is very exciting for me to be able to stand here, to know the organization is solid, that we are growing from strength in numbers, and we'll be here for another 10 years.
And that's why I can say I'm gonna be. The current of 10 years, I can say I was not able actually even to speak before people. I was not in a position to meet and to interact. But for now, I can meet you, interact with you, despite there's no measure. That's the thing I really enjoy. We are a team, like George mentioned, the camaraderie with which we held each other, with which we listened to each other and met each other's needs has been very moving for me. And it's the reason why I'm still here. It goes beyond just work. I care about my colleagues' personal well-being, and if they're not well, they're able to come into a team meeting. So our team meetings always start with, how are you, really, how are you, and you get to know where everyone is and bring in resources to assist them if they are struggling in a particular area. The most memorable thing for me is how we've held each other through the tough times to now, and how we still continue to hold each other.
Some of the highlights over the last few years, there are a couple of them, but I think one of the major ones was we launched our very first fund in 2015. And I think we had just convinced HEVA to give us to something like 200,000 euros to test a fund and invest in businesses. So we invested in about 8 companies, some in photography, some in fashion. And so that was a major highlight because when we were putting on the whiteboard HEVA, you realize that yes, you have this dream, but when it actually happens, it feels like such a major win. So that was one of the major highlights. And then the second highlight was probably when we signed another contract with the French Development Agency. And that was primarily a financing contract. It was the first time that the French Development Agency had signed such a contract with a fund that invests in the creative sector. The third one, and I'm torn because I feel like there are so many, but I will say another 2. So we did this thing when UNCTAD it was an event, when the forum was happening in Kenya. So we had this workshop where we invited different creatives. We also invited the government of Kenya. And I remember this particular day where 3 ministers came into the room. The president was supposed to come, but he didn't come. However, that I think for me was a signal because we were like a bunch of young guys putting together stuff, not really thinking that anyone is taking this thing seriously. But then we see 3 cabinet ministers, local ministers then, come into the room and make declarations around their support for the creative sector, their roadmap for this space. It validated a lot of the work that we were doing. And then finally, I would say 2022, last year, when I became the managing partner. I guess it's a highlight for me. I don't know if it's a highlight for HEVA, but for me, it's a highlight. It's a major highlight in my career, one. But then also after serving this organization for close to 10 years now, I feel like it couldn't have come at a better time.
So I think for me, anything that allows me to do storytelling, story making, I'll always be curious about. Going forward at HEVA, I would like my role to involve more strategic direction, looking for partnerships and collaborations that really work with our organizational values, that really focus on our communities of interest, and that allow us to expand in the ways that we want to.
One of the things that I look forward to in the future at HEVA is how the organization is going to respond to how the arts is morphing and changing in East Africa. Right now, I feel like there's a huge spotlight on our region, and I'm very excited to also see how HEVA will work with the younger artists and younger voices in the space. Culture is constantly being pushed forward by younger voices.
But I know there is a plan to grow across the continent. This offers a lot of opportunities to expand the team, a lot of areas to kind of grow myself and my journey. I feel like the Kenyan sector might have already been conquered, but there's an opportunity to conquer other markets and other sectors, be it in East Africa, in West Africa, in South Africa. And I'm excited to be part of that journey and see what that means for me.
The last 10 years have been planting. We've been putting a seed in the ground. And I think the next 10 years are when we will actually reap and see the benefits or the interest and the earnings that we've been putting in the ground actually coming to fruition.
How does the machine reproduce empathy for the artist? Creation process of the artist and the maker and the thinker is sensitive, it is IP driven, it's specific. So can this machine that we have made such big claims continuously create empathy for this person, however difficult that person is, the person we chose to love? Because investing in an artist is difficult. And so HEVA has passed that test, and I dare say that because different models, whether it's debt, we've been able to give a woman at Uhuru Market money and a guy who runs a company in Lavington and a student at KCA. The machine has created empathy continuously using money that's completely tone deaf and has tried to meet this person halfway.
Because the thing is, I think with the pandemic happening, it was an eye-opener for most of us, that there are things that need to be done. There are things that, we were forced to adopt, such as maybe using digital spaces to converse, digital spaces to share content. So my hope is that that was a learning point, that building forward, maybe we need to embrace more technology and also science.
The next decade really now is care for the people in the machine so that they can have the bandwidth, the leg room to continuously do this work for another decade. That is now the new test. And I'm glad that I'm not the one leading the machine now towards that direction. Now it's the work of dignifying the intermediary.
Because there's been so many challenges to get here, and we're not only standing strong, but also growing. So we knew this is what we wanted. But, you have those doubts. You're like, okay, are we really on the right path? When the doors are shut, you're like, what are we actually doing? What are we actually building? So I think HEVA at 10 is a testament of all the people in that room writing on that whiteboard, visualizing an institution, a fund, a circle, but, something. They were visualizing something. I don't think it's a coincidence. I do not think things happen just like that. I think there's a reason why it's turning 10 and I'm the managing partner. I don't know what the reason is. I believe it's going to reveal itself very soon. But I do feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be.
The color that best describes me is all shades of purple. I'd say emerald green. It's chill, laid back, but so beautiful and so captivating.
My personality shifts in between gray and black. I don't think I have a proper explanation to it.
So I'd say I have bits of black, bits of white, and moments where maybe purples.